to our recording later. All right, so without further ado, without any more spiels, I want to welcome you all to the Dealing with Stress webinar. This is a presentation of the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training. My name is Jess Rossman, and I'll be your host for the webinar today, and our instructor will be the lovely Donna St. John. At this point, I'm just going to mute everyone's phones or check to make sure they're muted, more like it, to make sure that background noise is kept to a minimum and that we can move through this content nice and easily. So if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to type them into the chat box. I've been having a lot of you folks practice with that this morning or this afternoon. So you can access the chat box by clicking on the chat button at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Once it's opened, you just type your message where it says enter chat message here and then press enter on your keyboard. The one thing I do request is that you just make sure everyone is selected in that to area. That makes sure that everybody can sort of follow the conversation. Now, the other way you can ask questions or just participate is by using the raise hand button. That's at the bottom of your screen next to an icon, an icon of a smiley face. And once you click on that button, you'll see a hand go up next to your name in the participants panel. So just so I know that everyone knows where it is, would you mind clicking that button for me now? So click on that raise hand button and you'll notice your hand go up. That's great. I see quite a few of you already are on that. And then you press that raise hand button again to lower it. Go up and then go down. This lets me know you have a question, but we'll also use it during the webinar for some other types of activities, so it's good to know where it is. And I can also lower all your hands as well. All right, so as I mentioned previously, today's webinar is sponsored by the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training. Many people just refer to us as the partnership. So for those of you who are maybe a little bit less familiar with us, the partnership is an organization that administers education and training programs for CSEA represented employees through labor management cooperation. It's funded through negotiated agreements between New York State and CSEA. Now, the partnership typically offers in-person classroom training, online learning, educational advisement services, grants, tuition benefits, labor management services, and other education and training programs, including the webinar you're attending today. Quite a few things. So in essence, the partnership is a joint labor management organization whose mission is to promote career mobility, improve job skills, support workplace safety and health, and promote effective labor management relations. You can learn more about us on our website or by calling us directly, and I will be providing our contact information at the end of today's webinar. So now that we all know a little bit more about the partnership, we are very aware of what the temperature is all across the state. Let's get started with the Dealing with Stress webinar. I'm going to turn the presentation over to your instructor, Donna.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And as Jessica mentioned, my name is Donna St. John, and we're both very happy that you could join us today. A little bit about myself. I'm actually a retired New York State employee, so I know some of the stressors that you deal with as the state workforce and what you have to encounter. So before we get started in the content of today's webinar, I have an interesting question for you. How often do you feel stressed per week? Is it A, never or rarely, B, once or twice a week, C, 3 or 4 times a week, or D, 5 or more times a week?
I'd like you all to notice that I've opened a polling panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You're going to take your mouse and select the circle next to the option A, B, C, or D that you feel best represents your current stress levels. Once you're done, click on the green send button at the bottom. And wow, you guys are really fast. I'm going to give a little bit more time so we can get most folks that are on right now. Now, if that doesn't show up for you for whatever reason, you can also just type your letter answer into the chat box. Okay, I'd say we're pretty good here. All right, Donna, the most popular answer is B, once or twice a week, followed by C, 3 to 4 times per week. And I think it's notable to mention that A, never or rarely, got only what appears to be 1 vote.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. As you can see, we all experience stress differently, or how often we think we feel it weekly. And we're going to talk about that later on. And the truth is, no matter what, it doesn't matter how many times you report it or how many times you feel stress at all. It's enough for you to seek some relief by attending a webinar such as this, right? So one thing we want you to take away is that you're not alone if you feel this way. Stress causes around 1 million workers to miss work every day. Nearly 83% of the workforce suffers from some work-related stress. And 55 of us are stressed at some point during the day, which is 20% higher than the world average of 35. And if that seems like a lot, consider that stress is not just restricted to the workplace. Although we do our best to establish a work-life balance, it doesn't mean the two spheres don't influence each other. When things happen at home, they can impact us at work and vice versa. So stress can affect our personal relationships, our job performance, and more. So it's important that we find ways to identify it, manage it, and eliminate as much of it as we can from our daily life. Now, in order to do that, today we're going to start by defining stress and a few other helpful terms. Then we're going to talk more about the stress effects on, and so how we can better recognize them in our work and our life. And finally, we're going to spend most of our time together talking about strategies to manage and reduce stress at work and at home. Now, as we go through the hour, you may find it helpful to take notes. But in the spirit of reducing stress, we provided a thorough handouts that's going to detail most of the information that we're going to cover today. The handouts also function as a worksheet so that you can use it and work through some of the questions that we're going to discuss today. And then we're going to end with creating your own stress management plan.
A copy of today's slides is included in your handouts along with the other things that Donna mentioned. And now those handouts would have been sent as attachments to the email you received confirming your enrollment in the class. If you can't find them, you can search for the partnership and you might have that pull it up in your inbox, or you can just let us know in the chat box and we can resend them to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Jessica. Now, this slide's going to act as a roadmap for our hour. So you're going to see it come up from time to time. It's just going to help us keep track of where we are and where we're headed. So first, let's talk about some common ground and define the important terms. Now, I know I asked you earlier, how stressed are you? But before we give the clinical definition, I want you to tell me, what is stress?
To answer Donna's first question, I want you to type in the chat box. A lot of you were using this before we started. If you came in a little bit later, the chat box is at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And when I opened that Slido poll earlier, it might have closed it. So to open it again, click on the chat bubble in the bottom right side. You may have to click it twice, once to really close it and then to open it again, and then type your message in there and press enter on your keyboard when you're done. So what is stress to you? How would you define it? Okay. I'm seeing a lot of, and I'll just do some quick trends here for you, Donna. I'm seeing overwhelm, anxiety, worry, that nervous feeling about things that you can't change or can't get done, out of control, a racing heart, pressure, uncomfortable feeling, difficult. Internal or external pressures that cause physiological responses. That is it's almost like you have our notes now. And not being in control, frustration, lots of good things. What do you think, Donna?
Oh, I think those are some great ways to define stress, right? Some great wording. And I think we can all agree, we all feel a lot of those things. I see the anxiety and overwhelmed and multiple priorities. It said multiple things happening. So priorities, I like not being in control, right? Anxiety, frustration. great job. And we all feel a lot of those things. There's similar definitions, and I'm not surprised. One of the things, it's hard to define stress without actually using the word stress. Am I right? Because stress is stressful. And some of the similar feelings include, like you guys all mentioned, there's also strain and tension and pressure on top of that overwhelmed feeling. So by definition, okay, this is the definition, stress is a physiological and psychological response to a stressor. A stressor can be an internal or external event or force or condition that's perceived as challenging to the individual itself. So let's break this definition down into parts so we can really understand what it means a little better. So first, stress can manifest itself in many ways. It can be physical, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And we are going to talk about that more. And then second, the stressor can be internal or external. This means that you can stress yourself out by playing a fake scenario over and over in your head. Think about it. How many of you have thought through a conflict and started to feel your body react physically, even though you're just thinking about it? Or also think about how do you feel if you're watching a scary movie? I know nowadays some of the shows that are on TV, they stress me out. My husband likes to watch some of those shows. And then finally, I also want you to think that the stressor is something that you perceive to be challenging. This means that your assessment of a situation matters, and that's why we all find things different in stressful levels. Now, next, I'd like to talk first about something called the cascading stress reaction. The stressor is the trigger to the entire scenario. Then the assessment is your perception of the stressor. Again, this could be real or perceived. Now, once you've assessed the stressor, your body sounds a chemical alarm and releases adrenaline and other chemicals as a result of a final action or reaction to the stressor. Now, have you ever heard of fight or flight, or maybe about freeze or fawn? These are your body's default reactions to danger or stress, and they're a result of this cascading stress scenario. Our primitive ancestors needed this ability to face the predators, right? Something like a saber-toothed tiger. And they needed it to either stand up and fight it off or quickly run away, or even stand very still and not to be seen. In today's world, we don't have to fend off those tigers. Our tigers are things such as deadlines and workloads and lack of resources, budgets, overtime. Those things like you guys said, feeling overwhelmed or maybe difficult encounters with coworkers or customers, or even just feeling disconnected or left out. And there's struggles outside of work as well. So though these stressors have changed, the stress scenario is going to remain the same for us. So anytime that there's a perceived threat or challenge, it could be good or bad, your body's going to automatically start down the stress scenario. So to sum it all up, stress really involves internal or external stressors and your mind's perception of that threat and preparing the body for action. So, what are some of your common stressors? We're going to make a word cloud with your responses. So I'm going to let Jessica tell you more about this.
All right, so in that same spot where the poll appeared earlier, I've just opened another activity, and you can type 1 or 2 words at a time to describe each one of your stressors, and you can do this more than once. So type a word or 2 to describe a single stressor, and then click send. And again, you can do that more than once or twice. And as you type, you'll see the word cloud start forming. So as people say the same thing, that word will get bigger. Right now we've got money. That's a big one, I would agree. And then a little bit smaller around the outer edges, we've got family, work. All of these are getting bigger. Let's see, losing a job, inflation. Yep, that's finances. They move too, so it makes my job a little trickier. Kids, I already said that one, sorry. Student loans, workloads, unreasonable requests, deadlines. Okay, I just see a few more people typing. I'll give you a chance to get that in there. Relationships. So yeah, you can start to see money is still, money, work, and family though, Donna. Those seem to be the top three.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for sharing. We do have a lot of stressors, and again, a lot of them are in we have common with other people. Now, I also want you to think that most changes, good or bad, are stressful in some way. Am I right? And keep in mind that your personal stressor is different from somebody else's, as we can see in all those words that you did come up with, and that some of them are common and some are not. So just to still go on that, some common sources of stress that we do have are life and world events. And I'll give you a few examples of each. Life and world events, a common stressor could be changing your job or your office location, or moving into a new home or a new family member. Could be marriage, divorce, or death of a loved one, or something fun like planning a vacation could be stressful, or getting ready for a party. And there's also those world events like the weather and the pandemic. That was a big stressor, I think, and politics. There's also money. I think a lot of us could agree with money. Just the general state of economy or our personal finances could be a stressor. And health issues. Could be a family member or friend or yourself. Could be something just like waiting for test results. There's also our workload. You said before, you feel overworked or overwhelmed. We could be stressed with new responsibilities, stressed with a new promotion coming up, or learning a new computer system, or maybe just stress about an upcoming meeting with your supervisor or director, and all those competing priorities and expectations that we have. There's also stress of conflict, any interpersonal conflict between it could be personal or at work with a family member or coworker, or even just anticipation of spending time with someone that you don't really get along with. Could also be that lack of social support. Sometimes if we feel like we're alone or we're the only one that actually experiences something. But I want you to keep in mind, the event could be something positive or negative. And this is not a complete list by no means, but it's a good representation of some of the stressors that we might experience. So whatever your personal stressors are, rest assured you're not the only one. And the strategies that we're going to talk about in a few moments can be applied to any of them. So let me talk about that stress can be negative or positive. Have you ever heard of something called good stress or eustress before? Now, it may seem odd, but it's true. It's some amount of stress or daily stress and is normal and necessary. So let's talk about the two different kinds. There's eustress. It's also called good stress or positive stress. And it's those positive emotions, and it's typically low level, but it motivates you to do things and set goals, to feel satisfied about your accomplishments. I got an example. I'm bringing my granddaughters to school, picking one up and the other one's in the car. And my 4-year-old granddaughter, I said, "Oh, next year you're going to be coming to school here." She just graduated preschool. So my little granddaughter goes, "Oh, well, I'm a little bit nervous about starting kindergarten." Well, obviously, right? Well, I think that's a good stress. So when you're feeling good stress, it might be described as a feeling of excitement or a little bit nervous, but it's the typically anticipating a positive outcome. And most importantly, it leaves you feeling energized and motivated, and you're ready to tackle that challenge. Now, there's also de-stress or negative or bad stress, okay, which is quite the opposite. And when you're under too much pressure and you're feeling overwhelmed or you're anticipating negative outcomes, you feel de-stressed. Or you may also be feeling a sense of hopelessness. And most of us, when we actually think of the word stress, we're thinking of bad stress, aren't we? So when I ask you a question, is stress bad? I should say on here, the response is, it depends. It depends on your perception or your assessment of the stressor and how you deal with it. There's one more term I want to define before we move on, and that's chronic stress. And this is stress that's constant and persists over an extended period of time. And it occurs when your natural stress reaction continues long term. It could be example of caring for a loved one or reliving an event in your mind and dwelling on something or worrying about a lot of things or dealing with difficult personalities over and over again. I want you to remember that stress reaction that we talked about. It's the stressor, the assessment, the chemical alarm, and the action. And the perceived threat or stressor, and it sets our body in motion, right? And then we go into survival mode. Our body produces cortisol and adrenaline, so you get ready to fight or flight or freeze. Then our body is actually, after the event, our body, well, while it's going on, our blood pressure goes up, maybe because it sends blood so we can act on whatever happening. And then afterward, after the event, we breathe, we calm down, right? And then the threat is gone away and we kind of go back to normal. Well, with chronic stress, that's not the case. Okay, the cycle just doesn't shut off. So our body keeps producing those chemicals. That's not healthy for us. So if we don't deal with the extended stress reaction, our body keeps in that state of defense. And scientists tell us that if we experience this process too long, it leads us down a path of creating a stress-related disease. Now, chronic stress puts a risk on health, and we have health problems such as anxiety, depression, digestive problems, even heart disease and others. It can cause us to exaggerate a perception of situations. And this is one of the reasons that it's most important that we manage your stress and we do it in healthy ways rather than let it build up. I hope we can all relate to that, right? Now, let's go on to our second bullet here, which is stress and you. So on that note, let's talk more about the effects of stress has on you and the human body in general. So I want to get you thinking. So we're gonna do a quick exercise here. I want you to imagine that you're in the middle of a task and you get a message from your supervisor that there's something that you completed that needs to be redone. So it doesn't matter whether you work in an office, direct care facility, or in a call center. Imagine a task that you do daily and having your supervisor interrupt what you're doing and say you have to redo your work. So now that you've thought that through, what are you feeling? In other words, how does stress show up in your life?
So go ahead and tell us how this stressful scenario, or what we designed to be stressful, has made you feel. What feelings is it dredging up for you? And how does that stress show up in your life? Go ahead and type that in the chat box. Okay. Oh, unfortunately, Rebecca says this happens all the time. A lot of people are saying that this makes them feel anxious. They would feel annoyed. A blank head and racing heart, maybe angry, dread, feeling inadequate, exhausted, panicky, perhaps eye roll and annoyed. Crystal says it depends on how fixable it is. But a lot of people are feeling some pretty negative, connotated feelings, irritated. And another one from Heather. If it's an email, flag it for later, and I'll tackle it when I'm ready.
Oh my God! Thank you for sharing, everybody. Yes, a lot of things that I think I would feel too. Annoyed. What did I do wrong? Irritated. I'm sorry that happens all the time. That's something, yes, to additional addressing, or how you can deal with it so it won't be chronic stress. But there's a lot of ways that we would typically feel. And I did see like some positive responses on there. So it does depend how often something like this happens, right? If you can have a positive response, or if you're not going to give it too much thought. I'm going to email it, tag it for later. Depends on your relationship with your supervisor as well, and how you do react to stress. So it's important that you know how you're reacting and what your next step would be. So and stress can affect us in different ways. We see different things on there. It could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be mental, and it may not always be the way that we expect. Like some people might have got nervous because they didn't know what they did wrong, and other people might be angry because they know they did it right. And other people may say, "Oh, all right, I'll have to deal with this later." So let's talk more about it. So we said it can affect you in different ways. So physically, stress can impact many things, right? In small doses, you may experience a few symptoms like fatigue, you get energy level, fatigue, headaches. I saw that list on there, maybe some muscle tension or cramps. However, that being said, that we talked about the health risk of chronic stress, and more so here, physical chronic stress might be weight loss, weight gain, stomach ulcers, lack of sleep, risk of injury, could go on to high blood pressure, and maybe even heart attacks, could go on to heart attacks. So why is too much stress a bad thing, right? We know why. It's going to affect us more. So the point is here that the stress reaction isn't so bad for you every so often, right? It happens. Everybody feels stress. Everybody feels something. But it's when you walk around most of the time and you feel like it's happening to you all the time. This puts your body into an immense strain. So the second way that it can affect us is emotionally. Emotional stress is exhausting, leaves you feeling drained, cause irritability and mood swings, and feels anxious and confused. And you might become easily frustrated or have crying spells. So haven't you experienced any of these before? If you have, click on the raise hand. I know I have.
Just as Donna said, go ahead and click on that raise hand button if you have experienced any of these things: mood swings, crying, confusion in response to stress. And oh boy, I wish I could say that there were fewer people, because this was not pleasant to experience, but it's at least half the class, Donna.
Yep. Yes. We all feel it. And right, we could say something, have our mood swings. Everybody doesn't necessarily cry when they're stressed, but you do feel it in short ways, or you might snap at somebody else as well. Thanks again for sharing. I'm glad you guys share. So now finally, stress can affect you mentally. I don't know if anybody was aware of that. Mental stress impacts how we do things and how we treat others. So stress reduces our critical thinking and our problem solving skills. So we fail to effectively communicate with our coworkers. So then we might become rigid or short tempered in our positions, or we also forget the art of appreciation. People think too. Sometimes your friends or your coworkers are under stress too. So think of some of the things that they're doing. Maybe they're under stress, right? They may be showing those signs. So we spent only a few minutes listing several physical, emotional, and mental outcomes of stress. Though the list is by no means all inclusive, instead, these are markers and signs that you can see stress is affecting you in a negative way. It's also important to note that everyone has a different reaction to stress, and keep in mind that if we don't deal with our stress, it can cause underlying problems with our health and our relationships. Now, if you notice that you regularly experience the symptoms of stress, make a note of them. If you're struggling to figure out what you're feeling, or if it's stress related, or if it's something else, it might help to keep a mood journal. And that means just write down the date, a brief description of the circumstances around the feeling. Then maybe jot down, was it physical, emotional, or mental effects? What are you experiencing? You can do it on paper, you can do it digital. Now, some people would do it on a computer, or maybe even just on your mobile phone. And that hopefully just after a few entries, you might notice a pattern, and then it helps you to clarify your experience. So now that we know what stress is and we know how it affects us, we're ready for some stress reduction strategies. So when you're feeling stressed, what is your go-to strategy? In other words, how do you typically deal with your stress? Tell us a little bit about that. Just using a couple words.
I'm going to open up another word cloud activity. I know I saw a couple of you already typing in. You're faster than me today. You can use the chat box if you like, but a word cloud will help us get a sense for the similarity of your responses. So go ahead and type your kind of coping mechanisms, coping strategies in there for me if you wouldn't mind. And I will also grab the ones that are in the chat. We had journaling from Crystal, deep breathing, exercise, talking to somebody, walking the dog. I love walking my dog, so I agree with that. Let's see, back to the word cloud. Biggest one right now is exercising, followed by going for a walk. So we definitely understand the benefits of physical movement, deep breathing, therapy. I love to see that. Music, talking about it has now become one of the bigger ones. Word searches, watching Netflix, yoga, and oh, I see a bubble bath in the chat, meditation. Yeah, I would definitely add music here. If I could, music, talking about it, and going for a walk, I would agree with all of those. And what about you, Donna?
Oh, those are all great ones. I do a lot of those. I, I saw word searches and stuff on there. Video games, I do. Sometimes, if I just want to take myself out of an element, I'll be doing a some kind of game on my computer. But a lot of breathing, walking, right? I also tend to eat, right? If I get stressed, I'll overeat a little bit. And I also avoid the issue once in a while, which is I know I use some that aren't so good. But I do a lot of talking. I'll talk to a friend. I'll talk to my support group who, I everything looks different for everyone. I also want to give a quick example, as we're going to go into the next slide, because this goes right with the next slide. During the pandemic, and I was so stressed out, and I'd have the news on, and like I said, I'm retired now, so I'm home, and the news is on, and I'm family members, and I'm getting stressed, and I'm worried and worried and worried about what's going on. I'm watching the news, and I found that my ineffective bad behavior that I was doing is, if I want to relax, I'm going to take a shot. So I would actually every once in a while have a shot. Then I realized, using my skills that I hopefully encounter, I go, this is not a good behavior. This is wrong, and this is not a good way to deal with this. You know what I did? I stopped doing that, and I turned the TV off to stop watching the news. So when we do find that we are using some of those bad coping skills, we want to make them right, right? So when you're feeling stressed, let's see, there's some temporary reliefs that we use. Like I said, drinking was one of them. Watching endless TV, that's not good. Maybe we withdraw, right, from others or isolate ourselves. Another ineffective behavior would be overeating or undereating or sleeping, right? Too much sleep or not enough sleep, right? Emotional outburst or excessive smoking or drinking, right? So if you notice that you're doing any of these in reaction to stress, the first clue is that something else needs to be done to relieve the stress. And actually, the ineffective response to stress, it's not going to address the actual source, but it may also continue, right? Further the stress, contribute to furthering the stress. And if you become aware of these behaviors, you can make better choices. And remember that we don't want to be in a constant state of stress, right? Because then we'll be prone to more problems and health problems. It's also important to know that everybody's experience and response to stress is different and unique. And we keep saying that because it's actually true. Although we all go through stress reactions similar, we saw earlier that we all feel it a little bit different, right? Our responses are different. So recognizing the stress and response that another person has, it takes a certain amount of emotional intelligence. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out, there's a webinar, Emotional Intelligence and Customer Service. That's also a great webinar to have. And see when that's offered through the partnership. So the point that we're trying to make here is that there's some behaviors that are beneficial and others that are not. And when we're trying to serve the same purpose, those temporary relief distractions, however, they give us a diversion, but it just pushes the problem right down the road, right? Evidently, it might make it worse. So how can we deal with stress in a more productive and proactive way? So we're going to look at 8 solid strategies. First thing we want to do is disrupt the stress reaction. That's not to say that we're never going to feel stressed again, because that's just not possible, right? So it's just a natural part of our experience. Instead, we want to focus on pausing between the stress reaction and your action. Okay, you want to challenge your assessment of the situation and Notice yourself and your surroundings before we begin to dive into our old habit of a reaction, right? Another way to look at this is that you you want to focus on the responding rather than the reacting. Now, react is a quick thing that happens without too much thought. And the response, on the other hand, it's thoughtful and it requires a moment to process the situation. So, so you want to take a breath or just stop and take a pause. Now, a good example of the difference between responding and reacting is that if your phone notification catches the corner of your eye, right? So we have our phone on, some kind of notification goes off, catches the corner of your eye, your natural reaction and impulse would be to reach for your phone and pick it up. Now, a response would be pausing before you reach for your phone, realizing that you're in the middle of a conversation or a meeting, and then just flipping it over instead of just picking it up right away. Okay. In a situation, right, stressful situation, if we pause to respond rather than react hastily, this can allow us to focus on the problem solving and then to practice stress coping strategies that we're going to talk about. Now, speaking of other strategies, how often do you feel like you have no control over what's happening? So, if you're stressed about something, there's no control over what's happening.
If you feel like you're stressing over things that you can't control, go ahead and click on that raise hand button for us and let us know. And let me get you a count here, Donna. I will raise my hand. And looks like it's about a third or maybe close to a half. And there's even some folks in the chat who are saying, all the time I do.
Again, yes, thanks. I would have to raise my hand for that too, Jessica. All the time, I find myself stressing about something I have no control over. But it is all the time too. It is my aha moment when I think about this. Okay, yeah, something's stressing me out. I'm going to stop and I'm going to think, do I have any control over this? So one of the ways to minimize your stressors is to identify what you do have control over or influence over, and then focus on those. So there's a lot of things that are outside of our immediate control that can cause us stress. We may worry about the weather, but we can't make it stop raining, can we? And we may be concerned about how somebody else feels or acts, but we can't force them to change how they feel or to feel something different. So within all the events in the world, we have a small sphere of the things that we can actually control or influence, or we have influence over. And within that sphere, there's even a smaller sphere of things that we actually want to control or change. And that is where we want to focus our energy. Some examples at work, there's some things that you can't change, right? So think about it. What can't you change? You can't change procedures, protocols, right? You can't change your boss. We can't change most deadlines, and we can't change other people's behaviors. But then you want to think, what can I change? Okay. You could change your workspace, maybe. You could change who you hang out with. Sometimes you can change your job. Okay. But sometimes all that you have control over is your own effort and attitude. Now, the next strategy is to consider your own perspective. And you can do this in different ways. There's positive practice, right? Positive reframing. And this is a practice applying positive mental attitude towards your perception of things. Simple way to do this is just adopt phrases like, I get to do this, instead of I have to do this. Or instead of saying I can't do this, say, look forward to doing this. Okay. You can apply gratitude to a wide range of situations, and that's going to be very helpful with stressors outside of your control. Okay. You want to positive. Thank God it didn't happen this way. You slam on your brakes of the car. Thank God, instead of being stressed, thank God I didn't hit the car in front of me. Thank God everybody's okay. You want to embrace any change, also positive, embrace change and find a positive. What's in the positive for you? What's in it for you? You can also look at different perspectives. It's also similar to reframing. Take a moment to look from somebody else's perspective. Maybe Talk to a trusted coworker, friend, or family member and see what they think of the issues as well. Okay. You can look at the big picture, right? How it's going to affect you 5 hours from now, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months from now. This is a useful strategy when we can't control our stressor. Quick example is um, we had a wedding shower and it started pouring and everybody is so stressed out because it didn't go perfect. First, I'm trying to find the positive in it. Well, nobody's going to forget that that was a shower on the wedding shower, right? And what's it going to do? Nobody got hurt. 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months from now. It was just an experience. So, and also focus on your problem solving. Okay. For those things that are actually in your control, you want to find uh, a reasonable solution for it. Engage in this critical thinking as a part of your brain. It's going to stop you from dwelling on your stressor. And it's likely going to result in a positive outcome, or at least one that you're going to find more satisfying. Now, maybe you struggle with one or two of the things that are in your control, but you never seem to be able to successfully manage them the way you'd like. Well, if that's the case, you might be struggling from procrastination. Does anybody here struggle with procrastination? I know I do.
Go ahead and raise your hand if you struggle with procrastination. I'll raise mine too. I think this one might be pretty popular. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it, Donna. This is definitely over half of the class this time, so we're definitely over the 30 people mark here.
Yes, Jessica, it's fairly common, right? It's a common problem. And also keep in mind, it's an ineffective coping mechanism. It would fall under those ones that short term. Now, something that you can do, time management is a part of the answer to procrastination. If you struggle with time management, you're likely taking on more than you can handle, or you find yourself missing deadlines or going to an extreme to meet them, right? Might even have trouble keeping things organized on your desk or in your mind. Now, earlier I mentioned that one of the responses to stress is to freeze. Well, in modern days, freeze may look more like procrastination or avoidance. Now, when we don't know what to do or what to do first, or maybe we don't think we have the skills or the resources to tackle it, we avoid it. And procrastination and avoiding are emotional responses to stress, but they're only going to make the problem worse, right? So, to stop the cycle of procrastination and stress, work on your time management techniques. Most of the time, the hardest part is getting started. So divide something that's overwhelming into smaller projects or actionable items. And if it's over a course of days, bring it even to smaller. Break it down as much as you need to. Get the resources you need is another thing. Training or assistance. Just get started on it. That's the best part with procrastination. So you can also try setting a timer and promise yourself that you're going to take a break when the timer goes off. So also they say with procrastination, tell somebody. If you tell somebody what you're doing, now you got to kind of own it, right? Now there's a lot of things. I could go on and on with time management, uh, but there's some time management tips in your handout, as well as if you want, you can check out the webinar for control your time, take control of your time. Now, our next strategy is self-care. And that's not just about a luxurious bath, though I heard that's a good one. That's a nice way to relax. Um, and get to treat yourself with something favorite. And I don't want you to think that self-care is something that's selfish or self-centered. It's about taking care of yourself, right? In order to show up for others in life and work, right? We need to take care of ourselves regularly as well. That means things like eating nutritiously, getting adequate sleep, exercising in ways that you feel good, right? Also means that have an outlet or activities that you enjoy. Take breaks. It's a good thing to set some boundaries too. Now, I do see a question there. Somebody's asking if procrastination is considered a negative stress. Um, everybody should think about that. Yes, if it's affecting you, if you're not taking charge of it and finding out it's one of your stressors that you need to find um, out more information, then yes, it does become a negative stress. But it also gets you going too. Procrastination, if you say, I'm not going to procrastinate, it gets you going, gets you motivated. And I would consider it a negative stress. Now I'm going to go back to relaxation strategies. I just happen to read on that. Uh, a bit of extension on self-care is the relaxation strategies, and they're a great way to calm yourself down in a moment or contribute to a greater sense of calm overall. In fact, the strategies they can lower your blood pressure, they'll slow your heart rate, improve digestion, they can improve your focus, and these are going to counter many of the negative physical effects on stress. So quickly, some of the common relaxation strategies, they include meditation and mindfulness, and both of these are being present in your surroundings, right? And calm. Also use some breathing techniques, and I hinted that I love using breathing techniques on a small level or later on. Uh, Part of the breathing technique is make sure that you're very aware and mindful of your breaths. You know, when you're breathing in, breathe through your nose. When you're breathing out, exhale. Just take time to think about what you're doing and be mindful of your breaths. Take a good five deep breaths sometimes. That's a nice relaxing technique. There's also progressive muscle relaxation. And you can go and learn more about any of these. And that one is you like tighten the muscles and then you just release. You individualize each part of your body and tighten up and be aware of your body itself. All of these are all related. There's also visualization. You know, I like to be around water. So I might stop and I might think of a nice pond. You know, I might enjoy the sound of a bird. And close your eyes and see it. There's also tons of apps. You want to look at water, pull it up on your phone, right? Or a nice bonfire or something. There's also journaling, right? Some people like to journal. They like to write down their thoughts and get them out. Uh, Also, in turn with journaling, color books, you know, some of those nice coloring books, adult coloring books, just gives you a chance to stop and relax and just think about what you're doing. You're coloring and the colors and change your mindset. Also, what's not on here is fun. Make sure you find things that are fun. Laughing is so important. What a stress relief laughing is. Also, music. Jessica said music hurt other people as well. Great way to relax yourself. Use music and friends, spending time with friends. Again, this list is not exhaustive, right? We could go on and on about this, but there's many variations of these techniques as well. And I encourage you to try one and see if it works. If not, try another one, right? And if you want more information on this and relaxation strategies, you can check out your handout. Okay, so who can you turn to for support when you're feeling stressed? And you don't have to share this now, but just take a moment to think of someone. Could be a family member, friend, coworkers, or so on. As we mentioned earlier, the lack of a support system can be a source of stress. Well, the opposite's true too. You know, a solid support system made of individuals that you can trust and talk to openly, that can be such a protective against the negative effects of stress. So, and it doesn't even need to be a large group either. So when you're feeling stressed, it's a good idea to lean on your support system. Just be clear. What do you need and what do you want? You know, do you want advice from them or you want them to just listen to you so you can vent? Either one is good. And sometimes our support system serves as a brief distraction from our stressors, right? And we approach it from different perspectives. Sometimes our support system needs our help as well. They might need our help. And I love this picture because our companion animals, the cats and dogs, they're a great part of our support system as well. They help us feel less alone. They get to make us more active. We have to help take care of them. And they provide soft, warm companionship because they love to be pet and snuggled, right? They're a great distraction. Now, if at any point you feel overwhelmed or like you don't have the tools you need to cope with negative effects of stress in your life, you can seek professional help. Now, Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, has representatives throughout New York State that can help identify and resolve a wide range of personal, family, and workplace issues, and it's at no cost. You can find more information about EAP and how to contact them in your handouts, but it's also on this slide. Now, you may find that you want to seek out additional professional help, such as a counselor or therapy. But whatever you choose to reach out to, please know that you don't have to struggle alone. Okay. And even if you don't even need to try everything before seeking help. And remember, these systems exist to help you. And they're not just as a last resort, but as another strategy that's available to you. And if you never sought professional help out before, doing so at the first time might be a little scary, might even be stressful, right? But also, if you're under the impression that asking for help makes you look bad or weak, that's just not true. It's simply just a sign that of resourcefulness, okay? And we all do need help from time to time. That's why our capacity to help others is one of our defining features of humanity. So now that we've gone through the 8 different strategies, I want to know, do you have any other stress reduction strategies to add to this list? And feel free to mention anything or any variations of what we've already talked about. So I'd like to hear from you guys now.
Please type in the chat box any other stress reduction strategies that you personally like to use or want to just share with other folks. We've had a lot of great discussion in the chat box, Donna, that you might have been noticing as you were talking. I wish I could call them all out a whole lot more. We are running a little short on time here as we come to the end. But lots of things like journaling, some tips on how to journal when you feel like you just don't have time for it. This group is very insightful, a lot of self-awareness, and a lot of really good tips. So if you are curious about some of the others, we have prayer, nature, bird watching, photography, making time to enjoy the little things. That's Lori. Time outside in my hammock. Joy, that's a good one. That sounds lovely. Gardening, hiking, enjoying the moment. Volunteering from Alyssa, that's great. Really helps set your mind right. Kickboxing. So there's a lot of good stuff being shared in that chat box. Like I said, I wish we could spend more time on this particular activity.
Oh, I love it. And I love it. I hope everybody can look through them, scroll through themselves as well and get some additional tips, because I agree with like just about all of them. They all sound great. I want to make my own list, right? And now, some of the things that we can't do, like if we want to do some stress things, relief at work, I also keep in mind sensory things. There are some smells that can relax you. We can't necessarily light candles, but some smells that can relax you. Or even if you can't have, you just use it in a lotion, maybe some lavender lotion or something like that. So water, music, if you can listen to music. So, but I love all those tips that everybody has there. And same thing, I mean, with the concept of time, we're going to have to keep it short, but we could dive into every single one of those, right? So there's a reason that so many of these strategies are out there today. And because there's just not one, right? There's no simple solution. There's no one thing that's going to work. So although we share common stressors, we all have unique personalities and experience. So this means that everyone has to deal with stress in their own way. So some of these strategies that we've talked about today are going to be helpful to you and others may not. So also, you may see someone that's struggling with stress or dealing with unhealthy coping mechanisms. Please try to be kind, right? In addition, the stress of others, perhaps not surprising, that could be a stressor for us. I can be stressed when I see somebody else under stress. However, if we take a proactive approach and regularly practice the strategies discussed here today, you're more likely to be able to be generous, maybe be able to help somebody else out as well. And make sure that you be kind. So those coping strategies are well and good, but if we don't do them, they're not much good, right? So, as we've learned today, excessive bad stress can find a way of disarming us and our motivations. So, what are we going to do? we're going to create a plan. At least that's our last section. We're going to spend some time and walk you through the steps to create your own stress management plan. We'll be doing this through an imagined example, but we're going to want you to fill in the blanks. So, like anyone, you're likely to have more than one regular stressor, but it's good for this purpose of this exercise, right? And your stress management plan that we're going to do right now, I want you to focus on one main stressor. So I want you to think for a second, where is stress most disruptive in your life? I want you to take a closer look at that set and one specific situation, and then ask yourself, what do you find stressful about it? So as you're thinking that in your head, we're going to start with our example, okay? So let's say that Pat works at a 24-hour facility and experiences a lot of stress at work because of workload and competing priorities. Normally, they've got time to manage the skills, but lately they're feeling overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. At this point, Pat is at the risk of missing a rapidly approaching deadline. Like, that's not happened to all of us at some point, right? Now, the next step to consider is the contributing factors. To do this, consider the circumstances around the stress. Like in this example, Pat has too much work. Is it because they never say no, or because the work is built up over time? Has Pat's supervisor been assigning more work, not knowing that they're overwhelmed? Is it a busy season at the agency? All these are possibilities that are contributing factors. So let's say that it's a busy season. And due to Pat's seniority in the position, their supervisor has been assigning more work. Pat's two colleagues were relatively new and still learning the job. So Pat knows this, okay? And because of this, they find it difficult to say no or to push back too much with their supervisor when they give them too much assignments. So knowing these things, which do you think are in Pat's control? A, busy season, or A, did I say that? A, busy season, B, staffing shortages and new employees, or C, trouble saying no.
All right, this is our last polling activity. So I've opened the panel on the right side. Take your mouse and select the option A, B, or C that you think Pat has control over. So what can Pat work on? What do they have control over? And then make sure you press send when you're done. And also, I'll say out loud, it is 11:58. We have a few more slides to go. If you have to leave, this will be recorded. It is being recorded, and that will come out to you. If you can stay an extra few minutes, we'll definitely have time we'll stay for questions, I should say. So, and Donna, the most popular answer by far is C, saying Pat, trouble saying no is the thing that they have control over.
Woohoo, great job. I agree, right? He has control. They have control over, is it saying no? They have no control over the busy season, and they have no control over the shortages and new employees. Okay, so we know the main stressor, okay, is too much work, and the contributing factors we talked about, and we also just discussed what's in Pat's control. So now let's do the same for you. Let's do this quick. First, identify the one main stressor in your life, and you want to identify what contributing factors are, and then you want to be able to recognize what they are, what's in your control, and then you can choose some healthy coping skills. I recommend you choose one or two. Don't try to do too many, and start with one that's short term and then one that's long term. So one that's going to give you immediate relief, and the other one that is going to help prevent it from happening again. In Pat's case, I think they should start by leaning into their support system. And this would be short term. So based on the conversation with Pat's supervisor, will help them identify priorities and what assignments to complete. Once that immediate issue is tackled, then Pat should consider some attainable goals by focusing on what they can control and learning to speak and ask for help. That'll be a long-term strategy. Yeah, so once you get the hang of a strategy, feel free to apply it regularly when you receive positive results. And then try adding another one. And then uh, start by practicing pausing. Do it daily for the next couple weeks or even months. Once pausing in a stressful situation becomes easy, you can add another strategy to the mix, maybe meditating for 5 minutes. And the more you practice each of these, the easier it'll be for you to do them consistently. Idea is that when you feel overwhelmed, right, the goal is to alleviate that. So we are out of time, but we'll keep going in the spirit of starting to build your own stress management toolbox and the strategies that you're going to start after today. What are one of the things that we talked about that you're going to share, or that you're going to do right away, or share one of your own?
All right, this is our last activity. So tell us in the chat box which one of these strategies you want to use today. Could be a short-term strategy, it could be a longer-term strategy, but Donna did ask you to think about a place in your life or work where stress shows up and is maybe the most disruptive. So what are you hoping to, what are the tools are you hoping to employ after you exit today's webinar? Let us know in the chat box. Okay, looking at alternative ways to deal with the stress, that's a good one. Deep breathing, picking up my journal more. Journaling was a really big one in this group in particular, Donna. So I think that's, yeah. I'm surprised because a lot of people don't often, that I meet don't often do it. Something that I also like to do and find it helps. Taking time for myself, breathing exercises, breaking things up into manageable parts, pausing. Oops, my box is getting too small. Time management, great. Exercising, lots of good things in here. Absolutely.
Great. I love it. When I started with this thing, pause was a great thing for me to say, pause, and always what's in your control, right? For me, is it in my control? If it's not in my control, I got to stop stressing about it and find some way to deal with the stress. If it's in my control, problem solving. I was going to say that's one of mine. So. And for sake of time, and you can keep doing this, we can keep going on and reading some of them, just can go through. But I want to say thank you to everybody for sharing with us. And don't forget about your handouts. It's great comprehensive guides, can help you walk through the information and give you additional information. And there's a lot of stress management websites and things out there you can also look into. So I want to thank you for being a part of our day today. Hope they letting us be a part of your day. I want to thank you to Jessica for hosting, and I hope this was helpful. So before you move on to any questions, I'll stay on as long as you need me to, but I'm going to let Jessica talk a little bit more about upcoming webinars and course